Oh, welcome to the podcast. Welcome to the tailgate session with David Dom. And this is where we talk about real life. We talk about real issues and real ways to help you have real results. This is a first. This is the first program of 4 where we're going to give you some insights on making effective phone calls, having effective phone conversations with your customers. You know, COVID-19 has really forced all of us to think about how we need to deliver, how we need to communicate with our customers, right? I mean, it used to be we just get in the pickup truck and we just drive out and see someone. And hopefully one day we can get back to that type of relationship of handshakes and just personal interaction like that. But for the time being, the phone call and text messages, emails may be the best way. And so we're going to go through a 4-step process. I'm going to have 4 podcasts. This one, our first podcast here today, is going to give you what I would call a greater understanding of some of the really small detailed things that you need to consider in terms of improving the way you communicate over the phone. I will also give you what we call the 3 steps in the process to make effective phone calls. Then on our future podcast, our second podcast is going to focus in on the first step of making effective phone calls. And then our third podcast will focus on the second step of making effective phone calls. And then our final one, our fourth, will be on the third step. And so we're breaking these up so that you're going to find that they're going to be shorter. We're going to be more focused, and I think it could be really helpful. You're going to want to grab yourself a pen or a pencil and a notebook and begin to take some notes here. You know, what makes communication, what are the specifics that makes communication more effective with anybody that we're dealing with? I've got some really neat research that may surprise you, and it's certainly going to help us understand why the steps we're going to be using are going to be so important. And so Harvard Business did some research, and what they found was that the word choice that we use, the words we use, they do matter, and they matter around about 10% of communication over the phone can be tied back to the word choice that we use, the words we use. So go ahead and write 10% word choice. Now, our tonality, the tonality, the tone of our voice, the tone of your voice absolutely matters. 40% of effective communication over the phone can be tied back to the tonality of your voice. We're gonna get into some more specifics here in just a bit about that. And then 50% can be tied back to our facial expression while we're talking on the phone and our body language. Who would have thought? Well, I didn't know they could see me, David. Well, they can't see you, but your facial expressions, the way you're seated, your body language will come through to the other person on the phone. So 50% can be tied back to your facial expression. That's gonna come through the phone. Your body language, 40% on your tonality of voice, and then 10% on your word choice. Let's talk a little bit about tonality. And we're gonna have 6 what I call steps in your checklist that you should always consider before, during, and after you've made a phone call. So you ready for those 6? Enthusiasm. Your enthusiasm is really powerful. Now, I'm not talking about that you have to be a cheerleader, but this is an opportunity for you to not be down in the dumps before you make a phone call and expect that, well, now just because they answer the phone, I'm going to be somehow better. So you really need to think about your enthusiasm, your motivation, your encouragement. All of those matter. They matter in regards to even your phone message that you have on your cell phone when people aren't able to get a hold of you. You may want to listen to that. Does it sound like somebody that you would want to talk to? Does it sound like somebody you'd want to do business with? The second key part of a checklist is honesty. Your voice tonality should convey honesty. That's empathy. That's, I understand. Can I share with you some things? It's at a time when you have to be honest with where with them in regards to if they're going to take something out of your program. Your voice and your words should say, John, can I be honest with you? A recent survey, which I did a podcast on from Farm Market ID, said that 70% of farmers right now, what they want is they want you to communicate and they want you to be honest. Your voice tonality can demonstrate your honesty and your empathy. The third key component that your voice should convey is respect. Respect for them. Did I catch you at a good time, John? Respect for yourself, too. I recommend. John, can I share with you some of my recommendations that you may want to consider now? You want to be respectful for their time, but your voice needs to demonstrate that over the phone. If you had your list of customers in front of you right now, from the customers you just love to the customers where, oh my golly, it's them again. Would the person near the bottom, would they hear that in your voice when you called them? Yeah. So it's how you'd like to be treated, right? So that might be hard, but I really want you to consider how my voice needs to come through in terms of a respectful way. The fourth thing, this is really important. You're going to want to put a couple stars by it, and that would be your confidence. Confidence. Your confidence in your product, your confidence in your ability to get things done, your confidence to build a plan, your confidence in them, your confidence in your company. Do you have confidence? Oh, it matters. You know, it matters a lot in regards to the words we use as well. So when you say things, well, I think it might, or oh, I'm not sure. I'd have to check. Versus, you know, I'm so glad you brought up that question. Other guys have asked me that same thing. Could I share with you why I'm so confident that we should continue to use that stabilizer with your nitrogen this spring? Your confidence matters. The fifth, what I would call piece of having your voice convey, it would be caring. Yeah, caring and empathy. I understand what you're dealing with. I cannot imagine what it must like. I know you said that your spouse is out of work right now. The kids are doing all their studies online. Wow, there's a lot going on. I totally understand. Is there one or two things that I could do to help alleviate some of that stress that I'm feeling that I'm getting over the phone from you today? We got to care. We have to care. And then the final piece of your voice always should come through would be your professionalism. And professionalism, the way that'll come through is, are you completely focused on them that day, your phone call at that time? I had a friend of mine on LinkedIn. He put down that this is my 22nd day in quarantine, and so I tucked my dress shirt into my sweats. You know what he meant. He said what he's meaning by that is that, you know, he was sitting around in his sweats, and he could tell that he wasn't doing his best work because, you know, I'm in my sweats. And so what do you look like when you're making these calls? What do you feel like when you're making these calls? Are you completely focused on them? Another quick story. Yesterday I had a phone appointment. I was the customer, which is sometimes fun, right? I was the customer. There was a person that had a scheduled call with me, and it was for 1 o'clock. And at 12:58, they texted me and they said, "Hey, could we back it up to 1:10? We're running a little bit late." Okay, I can do that. at 109, one of the partners said, it's we only have one license for Zoom. We're still working with another client. Could you call us? Could you call me? Well, I said I could. So I merged the call with Michelle, and we were talking, and you could hear other phones ringing. Their cell phone was buzzing. You could tell they were doing work in the background, shuffling papers. They weren't focused on David. They weren't focused on David and Michelle and Alterate. So are you focused? Are you focused when you make those calls? Well, there's a lot that goes in to making great phone calls and having a great conversation with someone over the phone. The importance of our words, the importance of tonality, the importance of how we see ourselves and the expressions that we can reflect over the phone in terms of our facial expressions and body language. Oh, it absolutely matters. It absolutely matters. Let me just give you 2 more really important tips that will end this session before we move on to our other parts of our programs on making effective sales calls. Go ahead and pick up your pencil and write down the word mirror, just like you're looking into a mirror, and we want to mirror the customer. So go ahead and write the words down. We want to mirror the customer, and to a degree. I mean, and so what this means is when you pick up the phone and you call one of your customers, that your voice volume on that phone through your phone should mirror to the level of theirs. And so if they're more quiet, well, then you're going to be just a little bit more quiet than what you may normally be. You don't have to be as quiet as them, but you're going to be a little bit more quiet. If they're more loud, well, then your voice should come through that way as well. So your voice volume, you need to mirror it to the customer. The second one, put a star by this one, your rate of speech. So the rate of which you deliver your words absolutely matters. So if you're working with someone who is a little bit slower, a little bit more deliberate in their speech, my speech will mirror that. I will slow down. If I'm working with someone that tends to talk a little bit faster, and I'm not that person, well, I need to speed my delivery up, right? So important. Then the third thing would be intensity. Yeah, your voice should mirror their intensity, their urgency. Mirroring people absolutely helps. The final, what I call key piece of information that can really be helpful for you is to create word pictures. So go ahead and write down the words creating word pictures. Now think about it. I'm talking with you right now. And if I asked you to think, what I'd like you to think about right now is I'd like you to think about a beautiful, what I call a beautiful lawn. It's turning green, and some blue spruces that are beginning to really grow. That's what I'm looking at right now. So you began to picture that as well. And so when you're on the phones with someone, it's really important that you create visual images. Go ahead and write that down. We got to create visual images. Let me give you some examples of that. Creating visual images is I'd like to describe to you, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, what I'm looking at right now on my screen. I have your maps pulled up. Didn't I describe to them what I'm seeing? I might say, I'd like you to, I've done a lot of work for you in your farm. I've put all your crop protection products on 3 pallets. I've got all your seed ready to go. It is all palletized. And based on your farm order, how you're going to plant, I actually stacked them in that order. And then I put together all the placement information and use information on the sides of those pallets. Isn't that different than, I've got all your stuff ready to go? See what I mean? So create visual images. Use action verbs. Using action verbs also create word pictures. And action verbs would be demonstrate, gain. Here's what I'd like to gain. What are we going to use first? Describe to me which farms are we going to plant first. Describe to me where you see a lot of winter annuals. Describe to me which farms that we need to make sure that we got the fertilizer applied first. We got that ready to go. Okay? So creating word pictures is so important. And then along the way, we got to be taking great notes. And when we share with the farmer that we're taking notes, we've just created a word picture for them. Think about that. When you're taking notes, you've created a word picture. And while they're talking, you can even use those words now, or those notes, to share with them what you just heard them say. If I heard you right, Charlie, you said that you're going to start on Grandma's 80 and then you're going to move over to Uncle Bob's. Is that right? That's exactly right. Thank you. Laying the foundation of how to make effective sales calls is so helpful. Now, in our future podcasts and our future parts to how to make effective sales calls, we're going to go through the 3 steps of making great effective phone calls. And those 3 steps are going to be sewing, and not what grandma or mom or what you do to sew a button on, but I'm talking about sowing seed, S-O-W-I-N-G, sowing. I thought it would be cool if we could have our processes tagged to agriculture. So we're sowing seeds right now. And one of the first things we have to do when we pick up the phone is we got to sow. And sowing is going to be where we build rapport, trust, where we build ideas. The second step that we'll talk about is cultivating. Yeah, we're going to be talking about cultivating. We got to move the dirt. We got to cultivate so that roots grow well. And so the second part that we'll move to is cultivating, and that's where we gather tremendous amounts of detailed information. We develop plans. We overcome objections and concerns. That is what we do in the cultivating stage. And then the third stage is where we harvest. Oh, harvesting. Isn't that fun? So go ahead and write down harvesting. And harvesting is where we set up specific timelines, deadlines, roles. We recap the call. We talk about next steps. Sowing, cultivating, and harvesting. That's where we're going to go next. So I invite you to come back for future programs. Part 2, where we'll talk about sowing. Part 3, where we'll talk about cultivating. And Part 4, where we're going to talk about harvesting. Oh, it's so great to be with you as we talk about real issues in real ways to give you real results. I'm David Dahm. Good phone calling.